Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 33 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, and today's episode is on why do we have such large brains, and this is an introduction to social cognition, and it's the 15th of May 2020 as I record this. So moving on to the psychology research section, we're going to be looking at what I read / found in the May 2020 edition of the British Psychological Society, The Psychologist magazine. And this month's edition was actually really interesting because there was a lot of psychological articles on the impact of COVID-19. It's like how it will affect us as the society, as the individual, ways to help mental health, the way how the world's adapting. And there was so much of it. I'm not going to talk about any of it today simply because there's so much, and it was ridiculously difficult to try and condense into a paragraph or two, or even a sentence, because there was just so much to try and condense. So I'm going to spare myself that burden simply because it was really interesting, but it's just going to be quite hard. And to be honest, I think I would need to prepare the psychology news section for a week if I was going to tell you even some of it. But I can at least summarise like a tiny bit of it. It's like basically everyone's going to have to adapt, and that will be very interesting. But they've also stressed that there will be psychological challenges for everyone, and there probably will be an increase in mental health demand. Demand for mental health services to help people cope. So that's a really quite terrible thing. But yeah, to be honest, I'm actually really looking forward to the future, because I think it will be really interesting to see what happens. So I think that'd be quite interesting. But there are two bits of news that I do want to pull out of that because I found it really quite interesting. They were interviews, but I'm just going to do my take on them. So the first one was that play in adults is becoming really, really popular. What they were saying is that from a societal point of view and from a coach point of view, it is really strange because adults do not play. If you think about what play is meant to be, it's meant to be for children only, and if adults engage in it, then they're silly, they're abnormal and everything. But to be honest, when you actually think about it, it's not, and also it's reflected in the natural world, as play is always shown in juveniles and is pretty much completely gone by adulthood. So that's quite interesting. But when we actually think about it, and the example that they used in the article is that the video game industry has grown dramatically in recent years, and now it's a medium that's exposed to the third of the world's population. Anyway, this is what I remember. And video games are really popular with adults, teenagers, and everything. And to be honest, adults love to play because, and this I completely understand, because by playing we are relaxing, we are enjoying life, and we are pretty much de-stressing. And of course, de-stressing, having fun is so important for your mental health. And I'm almost laughing at myself because I keep shaking my hand like the stereotypical Italians do, which I've no idea why. I just think it's really strange. So anyway, so the takeaway point here is that do not be scared to play. Enjoy life. If you enjoy something that other people laugh at, of course, if it's illegal, don't do it. But just enjoy life. Don't be scared to play. For example, my version of a play, it can be classed as something really sad. And I just write fiction because you can do anything you want. Like, I've smashed people's heads in. I've made people's bodies being ripped apart. That's more the dark side. But I've done, I don't know. I've just done so much. I've done so much in fiction. To be honest. So, and that's actually quite fun. So what else? So what else like do I do for fun? Spend time with family, friends, all the like usual stuff. I'm just trying to think of types of play, to be honest. I don't know, but when we think of a play, it can also be reading books. I've actually got tons of books to read, and it must have been a week or two ago, I was actually counting up all the books that I've read like this year, and so far, so it's May, so we're 5 months in, and I've read almost 40 books. Well, 40 books because I'm keeping a detailed list like this year because very quickly because there's a myth in the writing like profession, or well, it's not a myth, it's more a like criticism that people were like when they say that people like want to write their books. So it's like there's already enough books in the world, and I forget what the myth is like exactly, but the comment that we always say is that we will always read more books than we will put out. So we're a self-sustaining industry, and I've read 40 books this year. I will not put out 40 books this year, nowhere close to it. So that's just a very good caveat for it. So I think by the end of the year, I think I'm going to put out something like 15, 18 books. If that's it. That is it, I say. God, that's it. No, no. To be honest, it is far from that's it. Anyway, so moving on to the next piece of news slash article that I really like is that science is a world without rules, and this I just love because, and this is so important because if science is bound to rules or just bound constricted in any way, then we have lost so much because science needs to explore, science needs to play, because if we don't challenge what's already done, also if we don't go and try new things, then science will stagnate. Science, psychology, whatever, it will stagnate. So we always need to be testing at the new horizon. We always need to be exploring stuff. So that's the takeaway here. So always play, always have fun, always enjoy life. To be honest, if you're a student like listening like to this and you're thinking, well, I don't want to go and test out X, it's not been done before, do not listen to yourself. Go and do it, have fun, because I don't know, there's a possibility, it might be a small one, that you could research this and you could find something groundbreaking, and you could be regarded as the next, I don't know, Piaget, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of like famous like psychologists now, which is actually quite funny because I've actually been doing some research on them. Freud, and yes, and I know that some of you might be laughing, but Freud is actually quite good. Well, some of his stuff is at least. Anyway, so that's enough the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. Moving on to the personal update, this week has been very interesting, and to be honest, I made a list of stuff that I wanted to talk about in this personal update, which I never do. And when it's actually come down to all the things I wanted to talk to you guys about, this should be a good few minutes, but it should be interesting. So, first of all, and to be honest, the more relevant for you wonderful psychology podcast listeners, is that the developmental second edition book is done. It's done, so I'll hopefully release that in August. Which now I'm actually talking about it out loud. I'm really happy that it's done because I'm a lot more. To be honest, I'm a lot more confident in developmental psychology now because it proved that I knew the stuff and I knew what I was talking about, which is always a concern as a psychology student. This I'm really pleased with. Yes, and I've explained it in a really good way. And to be honest, I've definitely understand a lot more now, especially when it comes to sensory development, which I still hate. The development of the senses is, I don't know, I just don't enjoy it as much. But I definitely feel more confident on it. And language development is, considering I'm a writer, I'm an author, you would thought I would enjoy that sort of like language development. I'm definitely more confident about it, and to be honest, I do actually quite like it after all. So I don't know. So it's just something to think about. Yes, and then this sort of like links like two together. So there's only one more book that I'll be writing for psychology, probably this year. I'm lingering with the idea of writing a book on dialectic, however you say it, dialectic behavioural therapy, or DBT, which is another version of cognitive behavioural therapy, but it's specifically for women by women, and it's used to treat borderline personality disorder, because I'm quite interested in that, and there's a really good book on it that I have my eye on. And I might write a book on a formulation, which is a major component of clinical psychology. So going on to that, the clinical psychology book, I I will definitely start by next time. Well, on the day this goes out, I'm hoping to have some of it done. To be honest, today is sort of just. So I finished the book last night at the time of recording, and I've just decided no, I'm not going to do writing now. I'm sort of just having a small checklist, or a sort of day where you just get things on your to-do list done that you've been putting off. So I've put some images up on Pinterest, and just those sort of like small things that's marketing, and just small little bits that just help. But that just help. So what else have I been up to this week? So I've been having a day to. Oh yes. So something else that I did like this week was I wrote a book cover through, an academic book cover through, which, to be honest, they're actually a lot easier than I thought they are, for the British Psychological Site Talk magazine, and I've submitted that. So hopefully they're gonna submit it, and then I can call myself a BPS Site Talk magazine published author, or some version of that, just to add a bit of social proof. And also it just helps in the job market. And if you know anyone from the Site Talk magazine editorial team, please tell them to I don't know I don't know, to be honest, but it's just a laugh. Something that I quite like about COVID-19, no actually, this is going off on a slight tangent, to be honest, and this is the last point. This is the last point, but it does contain some very useful stuff for all of you, to be honest. So something that I quite like about Kickstarter, which I've mentioned before, is that a while back I supported a campaign from the wonderful Kristen Catherine Rush and Dina Wesley Smith, some great authors, and I got a bunch of free courses off them, and I've been doing this one about renew and refresh, and it's all about being a writer, or all about being an author for the long term. And there's some really quite golden bits that I think can apply to anyone, but inventory. There was an entire week dedicated on it, and I'm thinking I definitely need to get my inventory in line. I won't bore you with those details, because I know that, because I doubt any of you are writers, so I won't bore you with that. But some very important things I want to tell all of you is that you need to do what you love. And in terms of writing, it's write what you love, write what you're passionate about, and you won't get burnt out. But this can apply for anyone. So if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, I promise you will reach burnout at some point. So my tip is reassess your life. That sounds really harsh, but I'm sorry if that's offended anyone, but just go through your life, think of everything, and just ask yourself, does this bring me joy? If not, stop it now. Otherwise you will probably reach burnout. That's almost a certainty at some point, and when you burn out, that's not a good thing. That's something to think about. And then the only other one that I think applies to everyone is the thing called the 20% rule. And what the 20% rule is, if you want to start something new, look at everything you do, and you can do this once a year. Just get rid of 20% of it. Just do not do 20% of it anymore. For example, I've sort of been, since I've done this, of course, I'm actually going to finish it straight after I've actually recorded this, is that, to be honest, I've been doing this serious writing thing for about, 14 months now, and back in March, end of March, early April, I looked at what I'd done in the previous year, laughed at myself for some of it, because I made some big mistakes. Not big mistakes, just small rookie mistakes, but I've actually gotten a bit of some things. And the biggest example is that I wanted to write some businessy books, businessy because I completely abandoned that. A, because I didn't actually enjoy doing that in the slightest, but I abandoned it just so I can make room for my Books for Writers brand, which I'm going to start officially and properly in August. That's when I'll be launching that brand, a newer website, and maybe a podcast, but I don't know yet. So the whole point of the takeaway message from this personal update section is just to look through your life, and if you don't enjoy it, stop doing it, and also look at everything you would do. Maybe try and get rid of 20% of it, as the whole point of this is that it will allow you to do new stuff. And very quickly, moving on to the sponsorship section of today's episode of the podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by my new Cognitive Psychology book, 2nd edition, which is available for pre-order until the 29th of March. And if you order it before the 29th of May 2020, then you can save £2 and $2. So if you want a book that includes a free link to a free book, then this is the book for you. And also, do you want to learn how our mental processes impact our behaviour? Have you ever wondered about how memory works and why it's flawed? Do you want to know how we think and what affects our decisions? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then this is the book for you. As in this book, you'll learn a lot about cognitive psychology and how our mental processes affect our behaviour, all in an easy and engaging way. By the end of this book, you will know what cognitive psychology is and how a very wide range of mental processes impact our behaviour. Buy today to start this great topic. And some of the content in this book includes memory, the working memory model, the motor store memory model, thinking, the reliability of memory, cognition in a digital world, which to this day I still love that topic, learning, types of learning, schema, social cognition, which we're going to be talking about it. Then this book also talks about consciousness, language, and how do we learn a language. So it's some really interesting topics, and hopefully you will enjoy this as much as I do. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. Moving on to the content part of today's episode, we're going to be looking at social cognition. So this I actually do quite like as a topic because it is quite interesting, and social cognition is so vital to human behaviour, our society, and everything. Because in short, social cognition basically describes how we can interact together, how we have social skills, and all of that sort of stuff, to put it really, really simply. And one of the major research areas in social cognition is that as humans we are very strange in the idea that we have really large brains for our body size, which is something that makes us very unique, and possibly, well, it does explain why we can do a lot of things that other animals can't. So the whole point of social cognition is that it looks at the mental processes behind our social interactions and the group processes. And going back to the larger brains, one of the reasons why this is unusual is that, well, our brains take up about 25% of our cardiac output, which otherwise means that it costs us 25% of our energy output, which is quite a high cost, to be honest. So what is the point of having these large organs that cost so much energy, or energy, especially when that energy could be put to, I don't know, could be argued better use, also known as keeping us alive when we need it. So there were quite a few different aspects of this. For example, brain size that can be explained through evolution, because our large brains that can aid our survival, as this allows us to develop social skills, and this allows us to form groups and communities that was beneficial for the survival of the species. And so this allowed us to hunt in packs, share the workload, and aid in the survival of the species in other ways. So that's one way, and that I quite like, because evolutionary theory I just quite like it in general, and that's actually quite logical. But again, that will only ever focus on biological explanations. Then you've got another one, which is ecological hypothesis, and that is the much more complicated and really quite psychology way of just saying that the environmental explanation for why we have such larger brains is that it says that our big brains are the byproduct of cognitive demands of certain behaviours, like forging mental maps of the landscape, for example, innovation and tool use. As a result, these instrumental skills give us a direct advantage over living as individuals for survival. Therefore, we develop better foraging skills, amongst other skills, or we could forage in groups and learn from others. So basically, the ecological hypothesis poses that we develop larger brains are because, and I should quickly note that I didn't actually explain why we're focusing on big brains when there's actually more to social cognition than the big brains. Well, this is an introduction, and this is taken from the introduction chapter of my cognitive psychology book, well, the second edition one. This is just a brief overview of a very massive topic, which is explained in the book over a few chapters, because social cognition also involves empathy, mirror neurons, and there's also a chapter in the book about empathy and autism, which is always interesting because most of the common misconceptions are actually wrong. If you want, you can just read in. Another explanation for our large brains is social learning theory, which you should know by now. I just love, because I don't know, because it's such an easy theory to put into everyday life, so that's why I quite like it. So if we apply social learning theory to social cognition, our large brains reflect the social skills that develop through social competition, and in order to achieve success socially, we needed to develop skills such as deception, forming alliances, and manipulation, meaning that social skills gave us a direct advantage to, well, being alone to survive. So by having and being able to use social skills is beneficial to the individual and not just the species. And in other words, like by having larger brains, we were able to develop these skills and learn socially from others. So that's quite useful. So that's it for the brief introduction. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and always feel free to check out my book, Cognitive Psychology, second edition, if you want to learn more about social cognition, as this is just the tip of the iceberg, at connorwhiteley.net/cognitive psychology, and it's available from all major ebook retailers. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.